Okay, year 9, so here's a short video with a few examples of rearranging formulae. The prep sheet you should have been emailed. As you can see, there's a few on my desk just here, so if you're a boarder and you need one and you can't get access to it online, there's a couple on my desk. Let's start with the stage 1 equation. These are equations where we only need to do one thing to solve the equation, to rearrange it in the way that we want. So let's imagine we're looking at the question y equals mx, and we want to make x the subject. As I said before, what I'm going to do is underline what I want to make the subject in a different colour so I know what I'm heading for. I want to make x the subject of this one. So, to do that I need to look at my subject. My subject here is x, and I need to say what has happened to x on that side of the equation. On that side of the equation, what has happened to x is that it's been multiplied by m. X has been multiplied by m. So in order to get rid of that multiplied by m, I need to do the opposite. And the opposite of multiplied by m is divide by m. So I need to do that to both sides. Divide by m, divide by m. Now on this side, the whole point of dividing by m was to get rid of the multiplied by m. So I'm always just going to end up with x there. But I need to make sure I understand what's happened on the other side. On the other side, I've still got my y, but now it's divided by m, and the easiest way to write that is as a fraction. Have I now got x as the subject of my formula? Yes, I have. So here's another example, y equals x plus p, and again I want to make x the subject. So I need to look at the right hand side of this equation and say, what has happened to x? What have we done to x to make this? Well, what we've done is we've added p. Now, in order to get x on its own, I need to do the opposite of that, adding p. And that is obviously going to be taking p away, or subtracting p. Now, if I subtract p from the right hand side, it's obviously going to leave me with x. That was the whole point of subtracting p in the first place, was to get rid of the plus p. But I need to make sure I do it to this side. I need to take p away from y. So I end up with y minus p. So in a stage 2 equation, we need to do two steps to get x on its own. Here I've got y equals mx plus c, a useful maths equation for graphs, and I want to make x the subject. Now, when I ask the question what's happened to x here, well, it's been multiplied by m and it's had c added. So I guess the question is, which do I sort out first? And the answer is I need to look at my BIDMAS. Brackets, indices or powers, divide and multiply, add and subtract. But because we are undoing things, we are using BIDMAS backwards. So the first thing I need to undo is the adding. To undo this plus c, I need to take away c from each side of my equation. If I do that, on this side, obviously I'm going to be just left with mx. The whole point of taking away c was to undo the plus c. But I need to make sure on the other side of my equation I do my y minus c. Now you can see that actually I've returned to a stage 1 equation, and it's actually the first example in this video. I've got m multiplied by x, and I need to get rid of this m. If it's multiplied to x, the opposite is to divide. So to get this x on its own, I need to divide by m. And I need to make sure I do that on both sides. Now, on the right hand side, if I divide by m, then the m is going to disappear. That was the whole point of dividing by m in the first place. But what happens on the left? Well, I've got y minus c, and I want to divide all of that by m. I want to divide all of that by m. So I get y minus c, all divided by m, is equal to x. And I've made x the subject of that formula. Now the wordy questions on the sheet are done in exactly the same way, but instead of letters and algebra I've got full words. Here I've got momentum is equal to mass times velocity, and I'm trying to make velocity the subject of the equation. Now we notice that velocity is underlined here to make it obvious what I'm doing, and velocity has been multiplied by mass. It's been multiplied by mass. So in order to undo that multiplying by mass, I need to divide by the mass. So divide by mass on each side. Divide by mass, divide by mass. So on the right hand side, dividing by mass, the whole point of dividing by mass was to get rid of this, wasn't it? So if I divide by mass, I'm just left with velocity. On the other side, I had momentum, but I need to divide that by mass, and the neatest way of writing that is as a fraction. Momentum divided by mass is velocity. So I've now got that equation with velocity as the subject. Remember, the key thing for doing this prep properly is to make sure you do the same thing to both sides every time. Keep doing the same thing to both sides, keep the equation balanced, and it will all work out fine. Have a go, and enjoy the extension if you try that too.